Well, hello, welcome to City Daily. Who are you? If I were to ask you that question, how would you respond? Now, there are plenty of ways that I could respond. I could say, my name is Ash. I could say, I am a husband, I'm a dad, I'm a Londoner, born and raised. I live in Bristol. I'm a black man, I'm a pastor, I'm a student. I could add many, many things to that list. There are many ways to describe me. I wonder how you would describe yourself. You know, it's interesting. Oftentimes, the way that we see ourselves or the way that we define ourselves can affect the way that we treat other people, the way that we interact with other people. So I've just given you a list of, I suppose, facts about myself. Maybe your list is slightly different. Well, the question therefore comes up: how do we then treat each other if we are different? How do we interact? What does that actually look like? And I suppose the sad fact of history is that humanity hasn't always done this well. The sad fact of history is that people who look and sound differently and are from different places have often been drawn into conflict and oppressing one another. That is the sad fact of human history. And certainly of late, over the past few years, there have been more and more stories coming up, particularly from America, of people being killed simply for the colour of their skin. Many, many names: Eric Garner, Trayvon Martin, George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery. Many, many, many names of, primarily in America, black people who have been killed simply for the colour of their skin, with very little or no justice at all. And it seems as though these brutal, heinous crimes go on and on and on and on, with no sight of justice at all. So this is not a new problem. It's always been a problem. But I suppose it feels very real, very present at the moment, particularly in the news. So what do we do with that? What does God say to that? How are we to respond? What is the role for the church when we see and we hear of such injustice? When we hear of people being mistreated, prejudiced against purely on the basis of their race or their skin color? Well, I believe that God says two things which are helpful, and very powerful in these circumstances. And the first is that God says that it is wrong. So I've just said that, in these circumstances, it feels like there has been no justice, that the perpetrators have just been allowed to carry on as if nothing has happened. Well, God is really clear in that this is wrong, this is evil, this is despicable, and ultimately there will be justice. Justice will be served one day. And I think that's really helpful, really important for us to remember. God is really clear that all people are created equal. All people are made in his image. Rich, poor, weak, strong, black, white, man, woman, we are all made in the image of God. And all have inherent worth and beauty. God is absolutely crystal clear on that. And there is no place for prejudice. There is no place for oppression. Ultimately, God will deal with it. So that is a help, that is an encouragement. There's something else that God says. And God says that there is a way for these barriers to be broken. We often put barriers up between ourselves, don't we? We define ourselves in a particular way, and then we've got a group of people over there who are different. It's us and them. Well, God says that there is a way for those barriers to be broken down. Those barriers are often remain in the hearts of all of us to some degree. And God says that the biggest issue for humanity is its separation from God. We have, all of us, turned away from God. We've essentially become rebels. We've essentially tried to live lives our own way. We've tried to steal honor, steal glory from the one who has created everything and sustains everything, the one who is the King of the universe. We have separated ourselves from God. Our sin, our wrongdoing, has created a barrier between us and him. Our sin has also, I suppose, put over us a sentence of death. So not only are we separated from God, but we have this heavy, weighty sentence of death over us. Justice ultimately will be served on us for the things that we have done which have been displeasing, dishonouring to God. All of humanity sits under that sentence. So we're all affected by sin. We all sin. But here's the interesting thing. We all have access to the cure for sin. For everyone, black, white, rich, poor, wherever you live, whoever you are, the only way to God is through Jesus. And God's absolutely clear. We all come by the same way. There's no kind of first class, second class system. There is no partiality. There is no prejudice. Whoever you are, whenever you are, we all come the same way to God, and that is only through Jesus. And Jesus does something radical. So as he lived a perfect life in our place, as he died a sacrificial death on a cross, and he rose again victorious over death, he rose and came to life again. He done something radical. Jesus was essentially creating a new humanity, a new race. And what that means is that for everyone who has trusted in him, who've put their faith in him, you are now forgiven by God. You are forgiven by God, and you are adopted into his family. And that therefore means that at the day of judgment, the judgment seat, we identify as those who have been saved by Jesus. I won't primarily identify as, hi, my name's Ash, I'm from London, I'm a dad, I'm a pastor. That is not how I will identify or define myself on that day. I will lift up my hand and I will say, I have been saved by Jesus. I have been cleansed and made whole and made new by Jesus. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm still those things. I'm still a dad, I'm still a black man, I'm still originally from London, I'm still someone who lives in Bristol. Those are important things about me, but they are not the prime things about me anymore. And I think that's a really key thing to remember, is that Jesus essentially creates a new humanity. Your prime identity is no longer based on your ethnicity or your social class or your background. Your prime identity, if you are a follower of Jesus, becomes that in and of itself. You've come into a new humanity, a new race. And what that means, in a moment, two people who may have been poles apart in terms of the spectrum, all of a sudden become family forever. That is how Jesus breaks down those barriers. We have the same need and we have the same Saviour. And in Jesus we become one. We become family with one another. So when we see injustices like we have seen over the past few years, as we've seen throughout history, what do? How do we actually respond? Well, I've got three things for us. And I think firstly, we weep and we grieve. These stories of real people who have suffered and been oppressed ought to lead us to weep and to grieve. Whether these people look like us or sound like us or are from the same background or country as us is not really the point. The point is these are people who are made in the image of God. People who are made in the likeness of God. An appropriate response is for us to grieve over the evil that we see, over the evil that has been done to such people. So we weep and we grieve, but we also speak out and challenge. And this is something that I've been reflecting on recently and I've been stirred about recently, is that we are not to allow injustice, oppression and evil to remain unchecked. Jesus is really clear. He tells it like it is. God is clear throughout the Bible that where there is evil, where there is wrongdoing, it needs to be challenged. It needs to be called out and spoken about. So we need to call it what it is. So we not only weep and grieve, but we speak out and we challenge these injustices. And we say these things are wrong. And we are looking for change. But thirdly, we boldly proclaim the good news of Jesus. And the reason why I say that is that there is hope. There will in fact come a day when we won't hear any of these stories anymore. These stories of these heinous crimes, these stories of just of ridiculous oppression and hate. There will come a day when there will be no more of those stories. the Bible tells us that there will in fact be a day when people from every nation, every language will be together, will be one, will be unified, united in praise and glory and adoration of Jesus. That's what the Bible tells us. And this good news concerning Jesus, actually, as we proclaim it, as we let the reality of that sink in our hearts, as other people hear that, essentially what we are doing is we are demonstrating, we are proclaiming that we believe that day will come, and we're wanting to see more of that in the here and the now. We want in the here and the now for those barriers to be broken down, for there to be unity, for there to be a richness of diversity in terms of our lived experience. Because Jesus will return, and on that day, again, black, white, rich, poor, people from across the world will be united, and there will be no more pain or suffering or tears or crying. And that is a fantastic day to look forward to. So as much as it is right for us, I think in the here and now we want to weep. We ought to weep and grieve over what we see. We do that, but at the same time we challenge the injustices, and at the same time we look forward to a glorious future where we will be united. We'll have our diversity, we'll have our distinctions, but actually the thing that holds us together will be much more significant than the things that distinguish us. So that's what I want to leave with you guys today. Thank you for listening. Love you, bless you, and I'll see you again sometime soon.